Welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to another Canal Update 7, all about the Stroudwater and Thames and Severn Canals. Combined, they're known as the Cotswold Canals. Today, you join me here at Siddington, about 2 miles south of the Roman town of Cirencester. This is the abandoned section of the Thames and Severn Canal. I'm going to tell you about the plans for phase 2 of what's going to be happening here. We're going to be looking at what remains of the Cirencester arm of the canal, which led just over the other side of the village. We're going to walk back to that shortly. And then I'm going to show you a crane at a place called Dud Bridge. And we're going to have a look at the Cotswold Water Park and what the plans are for that as well, where the canal is going to be brought forward from Inglesham back into Gloucestershire to meet it at a new marina and visitor centre here in Gloucestershire. So why not join me again for another canal update here on West Country Wanderings. Now, this bridge behind me is the delightfully named Cowground Bridge. I've no idea how he got that unusual name. If anybody knows, please drop a comment below. I'll have a look at my history books when I get back, and if I find anything, I'll put that in the usual way below. But I have read the books, or certainly most of them, but I don't recall coming up with the name of that. It is in good condition. The brickwork seems to be in very good condition. I'll insert some bits and video and footage of photographs that I've taken. It just connects up 2 fields, so it is lightly used by the old farmer with his tractor now and again, but not that frequently. But it does seem to be in a fairly good state of repair. So when this canal is restored, they shouldn't need to do too much work on this bridge here. Now, just to let you know, this section here is in phase 3 of the restoration, so this won't actually be done for some time because of the fact it lies between Gateway Bridge, which is some few miles south of me here, and Brimscombe Port, which we looked at last time. So this is phase 3. What we're going to be looking at later in the video is the start or the end of phase 2, which is at the Cotswold Water Park at a place called Cerney Wick, and it's that section between Cerney Wick and Inglesham, which we looked at in update number 4, that is going to be restored after the canal has been connected between Easington and Saw Junction, which is where all the activity on focus is on that, and we'll come back to that as well later in the video. Now, the bridge I'm currently standing on clearly wasn't here when the Thames and Severn Canal was built. In fact, obviously there's a dry section there, there's no water in that section there, but the section I'll just show you in front of me does have water in it. But I'm actually standing above water. I'm currently standing above the River Churn, and it was here that there was an aqueduct on the Thames and Severn Canal to carry the canal across the River Churn. Just show you to see what remains of that today. So we have water in the Thames and Severn Canal behind me. We have water in the River Churn, and obviously an aqueduct went right across this point here. I don't recall in seeing the books I've got on the Thames and Severn ever recall seeing a photograph of what this aqueduct looked like when it was here. I'm indeed not sure when the aqueduct was demolished. If I find out a date of when it was taken down, I will do that for you. Obviously it would have been at some point after the canal fell out of use sometime in the 1930s, I would imagine. So it's probably that sort of date. It may have been a bit later into the 1940s or indeed 1950s, but I'll check that for you and drop that below. If I do find a photograph, you'll find that be going up on the screen now, but I don't think there is one in existence, sadly. But if anybody has seen one of this aqueduct, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop a comment below. So now I'm currently standing on the bed of the canal, as I say, just a few metres behind me, the canal is in water. It's slightly high here because this is the exact spot that the aqueduct would have been. The only thing I've been able to find in terms of the engineering or remains of the aqueduct are just a few stone blocks which are just ahead of me. There is a fence to stop you falling into the River Churn. I'll just do a shot of that now and I'll do a photograph of those stones, but there is some metal railings, but they look like they were put there after the aqueduct fell out of use, just to protect people again from falling in the river. But it's a delightful spot here. It's really quiet. Really nice part of the Thames and Severn. Obviously there'll be a lot of work to get this back up and running again, not least of which building a new aqueduct to get across the River Churn at this point, which obviously won't be cheap, but I'll just show you those bits that I have seen of the remains of this one-time aqueduct here on the Thames and Severn Canal. Now I've just walked back to the car in Siddington and just grabbed a cup of tea from the thermos. There is a pub in Siddington called the Greyhound, and that was actually used by the navvies when this canal was being built here on the Thames and Severn. As well as the Cirencester arm, you also have these two very deep locks here. I think there's another couple a bit further on as well, but you've certainly got these two deep locks here, just the other side of the Turnpike Road. And the other thing to mention is that there is no canal bridge in Siddington itself, in terms of that now that the road cuts right through across the canal. The canal ceases to exist at that point, just the other side, on the Cirencester side of Siddington, as it were. And obviously that will need major rethink when this canal, this section 3, is being restored. So we have this really deep lock behind me. We have another deep lock in front of me. We'll have a look at that in a second. The other thing to point out of interest here is that at one time the railway between Cirencester and Cricklade, I think it goes on down to a place called Blunsdon to the north of Swindon. That is now a steam railway centre. Perhaps we'll look at that in the future on West Country Wanderings. But yeah, that cut across the canal here, all you can make out now is part of the red brick abutment. It's not too exciting architecturally. I will do a shot of it though. But yeah, fantastic locks here. Obviously these will all have to be restored come the phase 3. It's a long way off, of course, but really interesting to see this here, because you've got this very narrow towpath as you come out of the village. You can't really see the canal at all, and then you're presented with these two fantastic locks in front of you. It's really good. So this is the second of the deep locks here at Siddington behind me. We also have a fantastic bridge as well. We'll have a closer look at that. And then we're going to move on a little bit further so we can find what remains of the Cirencester arm which left here. Now, the fact that this canal is dry gives you some sense of clue as to why the Cirencester arm was built. I'll talk more about that in a bit. I've just come to the playing fields in Siddington, and I'll just explain why in a second. The main reason is that it's very difficult to work out the line of the former Cirencester arm, because so much of it has now been built over. At the Cirencester end itself, it now forms part of the Love Lane industrial estate, so there's a complete industrial units over that section. The other issue is here, the arm left the other side of the bridge that we just saw earlier in the video, and that section has now been completely taken over with private development. It's very overgrown and there is no access to the towpath. In fact, there's no access to the towpath at all between this section here and Coats on the Thames and Severn Canal. So what I've done is we're going to walk back up into the village in a second and just show you where the canal diverted off from that section there. But before I do that, I'll just explain a little bit about the canal arm. It ran for approximately 2 miles, so from this area just to the north of me here, to the corner of that playing field where you can see the playing field there, just left there. and said our bridge that we saw in the video, canal bridge, is just over that side. I can't get access to the other side of that canal bridge. The reason it was built wasn't so much for heavy industry, although a little bit of coal was transferred from the Thames and Severn, where it came down from the Midlands through the Stroudwater and it was taken up into Cirencester, some of the industries in the town, but there wasn't a huge amount of coal, and that's of course why it fell into disuse. It was closed earlier than the rest of the canal, but its main function was to provide a source of water into the Thames and Severn. Now, as we'll see as we do later updates, particularly when we go to Thames Head near Coats, and when I'll talk about the engines that there used to be there, a lot of the Thames and Severn Canal in this section runs dry, as it does here in Siddington. Because of the nature of the rock, it literally just drains away. So the canal owners had a constant requirement for water to feed the canal system, and that was the main reason that this Cirencester arm was built. It does form part of a little walkway. There is a little footpath that takes you into the town of Cirencester, but sadly very little remains to be seen. There are no locks to see, and so the majority of the canal has now been built over, which is really sad. There is a little bit of a nature corridor, and I'll see if I can get a bit of that for you. But that is it. That is the Cirencester arm on the Thames and Severn Canal. So this is the final lock here at Siddington, one of three. This is the one closest to Brimscombe Port, or the one furthest away from the River Thames, whichever you prefer. And just beyond this lock, I say, it's now private property. There is no more towpath access beyond this point at all, heading in a westerly direction. The Cirencester arm diverted around to the right, just by the end of that lock wall that you see there behind me, but that's as far as I can get. I did find a cottage called Canal Cottage, or Canal House, I think it was. I'll insert a clip of that, because it looks like that the Cirencester arm ran alongside that cottage. It probably would have been a canal keeper's cottage, maybe to oversee the Cirencester arm, or certainly the southern part of it. So that's the end of the Cirencester arm story here at Siddington. What we're going to do now is we're going to head a bit further down to look at the Cotswold Water Park and see what we can see of the canal there. Now you should be able to make out Gateway Bridge behind me. That's important for a number of reasons. I can't get any closer because there is the noisy road. There's also lots of people with the facilities with the car park, etc. But it marks a dividing line between phase 2 of the restoration of the Cotswold Canals and phase 3. So everything beyond this bridge, in other words, away from me, down towards Inglesham and the River Thames, is phase 2. That is the phase that will be restored next after the canal has been reconnected to the network at Sewell Junction. The bit I'm standing on currently, heading all the way back to Siddington and beyond towards Brimscombe Port, is phase 3. So that will be obviously a later phase. There's obviously no dates on that at the moment because we need to complete phase 1B first. But yeah, it's a significant point here, because also it marks the gateway not only to the canal on the Thames and Severn and the bit that's going to be restored to the Thames, but also you have the facilities here with the car park and the fact there's going to be a new visitor centre. So here we are at the Cotswold Water Park. As you can see, lake number 4. Sun's come out, it's fantastic. The Thames and Severn Canal is literally just behind my camera as I'm doing this piece to camera now. Just behind there is the towpath. And that's why this place is so important for the development of the Thames and Severn Canal in terms of phase 2. Because of course, if you have a marina here or in this general area, you've got the facilities, you have the car park, the Cotswold Canals Visitor Centre with a cafe, all the other facilities in terms of accommodation. It makes it brilliant in terms of leisure and tourism, and brings people in to use and take advantage of the canal in a really good way, positive. It's also fantastic for bird life. Birds around singing at the moment. Beautiful. I've seen some wildlife on the water itself, so that's great. We've got the reeds. These used to be gravel pits, of course, and they have gradually been restored in terms of nature as they've been dug out in terms of gravel. It's been emptied out. They've been left to fill up with water and return once more to nature, and it provides a beautiful wildlife habitat. But yes, this is the gateway site. This is the key point here. From here, down to the River Thames at Inglesham, and that is phase 2, will form part of the Cotswold Canals project. Now I'm about a quarter of a mile from Wick, and that's Roundhouse. Before we go on to that, I'm just going to hand you over now to the Stroudwater Canal to give you an update of what's happening at the ocean in Stonehouse, and also that crane at Dud Bridge. See you in a bit. Well, welcome here to the Stroudwater Canal. We're back at Stonehouse, just a few miles along from the River Severn, to the east of the River Severn. I've got the parish church of St Sire's in front of me. Behind me is Nutshell Bridge, complete with Nutshell Cottage or Nutshell House. There's always been a bit of a debate about why that particular cottage was built next to the Stroudwater Canal. One of the theories is, and I don't know whether any of them are right, was right or wrong, was that it acted as a gatekeeper for the mills. There is a Stonehouse lower mill, there is a paper bag mill down there, which has actually been in existence when the canal was running. It's been in existence since, I think this year it celebrates its 100th anniversary. So there are a couple of other mills in the area. Perhaps it was built as a gatekeeper to those mills. We don't really know, to be honest. All I can say, it's a fabulous building right next to one of the iconic Stroudwater canal bridges here. But the reason, of course, we've come here today is to have a look at the latest on the Ocean Bridge. I won't be able to do a piece of camera there because that's very tight space there, but I'll do it as a voiceover so you can see the latest on that there. And then we'll go and have a look at this crane over at Dud Bridge. So we're back at the ocean again. As you can see, that screen has gone from here last time. There is a bit more water in it. I think that's mainly from the heavy rainfall that we've had more than anything else. Other than that, there isn't much else to report. They have done some work on the towpath though. Let's see if I can just zoom in that so you can get a clearer shot. So if you just have a look behind the white and red fencing there, you can see that the track has been made through that new bridge there. As I say, it's only about 3 weeks before we'll be able to walk through that, through to the Stroudwater Canal on the other side of that bridge. Now come to location just 2 miles to the east of Stonehouse and that bridge at the ocean, to a place called Dud Bridge. We're just about 1 mile to the west of the town of Stroud, where the Thames and Severn and the Stroudwater canals meet. I'm actually on Holly Orchard Bridge, which is a high bridge which was restored as part of the renovation of this canal back some 10 years ago now. I'm just going down to have a look at something really interesting next to the towpath. So behind me is Dud Bridge Wharf, and towering above it is a crane which was built in 1854 by the John Stevenson Foundry in Preston in Lancashire. It's the last surviving crane on the Cotswold Canals. It's the Thames and Severn and Stroudwater combined, and it's a magnificent example. We'll just see if we can have a closer look. The jib was fixed and it could not be raised or lowered. It could be rotated to swing out above your heads and over the canal boats moored below to lift the goods into the barges on the Stroudwater Canal. Timber, stone and iron were the main goods lifted by the crane. Rules stated that 3 men had to operate the crane when lifting these items, and it was designed to lift 5 tons and cost just £200. So that's Ebley Mill behind me. Just before I hand you back to the Thames and Severn Canal to have a look at that roundhouse at Wick. Just one other thing to mention while here by the Stroudwater, something that applies to both canals, the Cotswold canals, is that you can download an app on both the Android and Apple Store, courtesy of the Cotswold Canals Trust, and it's a towpath guide. It's very useful. What I would say, it's really good to use it in conjunction with a proper OS map, either a paper one or the OS app, which I constantly talk about, which is an absolute godsend when you're out and about exploring different places. If you use those two together as you're walking along the towpath, it will highlight interesting places. It will tell you about the locks, the bridges, the basins, and other interesting sites as well, like the various mills that go along the Stroud Valley, and as the canal continues into Wiltshire, as we'll see. Anyway, we're going back now to the Thames and Severn Canal. So behind me is Stroudwater Roundhouse, one of 5 on the Thames and Severn Canal. Interestingly, you don't see any of them on the Stroudwater. Another thing you don't see on the Stroudwater is the milestones that we've seen, the ones that say how far it is to Inglesham and Woolbridge. But that aside, yeah, there's 5 of these. Various theories how they came up with the design. One of the ones that kind of does the round, excuse the pun, is the fact they're round to ward away the devil. Well, I don't think that's the case at all. I think what happened was when the architects were looking to build various buildings alongside the Thames and Severn Canal was built, the canal actually went through part of the Duke of Beaufort's estate, and that's obviously Cirencester Park. Now, in Cirencester Park there is a roundhouse, and that was built much earlier than these, and this one followed that same design. So you have that round design there. We have seen the one at Chelford, and we've also seen the one that bit further down at Inglesham as well. Together they form an attractive feature of the Thames and Severn Canal. There's one more at Coates, another one, the name escapes me where it is, and so somebody will drop it in below, I can't remember at the moment. But yeah, there are 5 altogether. We will look them as we do the updates here. They are all private residences, so be mindful of that when you're looking and doing photography, so you need to be aware of people's privacy with those. The other thing to mention here at Stroudwater is in front of the roundhouse is a lock. Now, during the Second World War, long after the canal was abandoned, so already it was in a depleted state, a bomb landed here and completely destroyed the lock. But thankfully, in the late 1980s, the good old Cotswold Canals Trust volunteers restored the lock, so it is in a pretty good condition, although sadly, the other end of the lock, there is a road bridge which is long gone. It's now somebody, obviously from the council, Wiltshire County Council's flattened it. We've got that, the same thing we've seen everywhere. There is a nicer example further on at Latin, which we'll look at next time on West Country Wanderings. But yeah, it's a beautiful spot here. Apart from the noise of that road, if you could take that away, this would be completely unchanged from when this canal and that roundhouse was built. They were built to house the people that worked on the canal, the bargemen, the people that maintained the canal, and general maintenance on the canal to look after the sluices and locks. So they were the people that would have been in them there. According to reports, they didn't find them particularly comfortable to be in those days. They were probably quite damp, but you know, obviously I'm sure the building's been very much improved these days, but in those days they were quite damp, and they didn't have some of the other facilities that we now have, like the heating and everything, so they probably weren't the greatest places to live in, but obviously they are very attractive features alongside the Thames and Severn. Now, while I'm still here, the Cotswold Water Park, I thought it appropriate to read you a message which is on the Cotswold Canals Trust website, which has been posted by a gentleman called Ken Bergen, who's the Director Trustee of the Trust. And it has significance. It actually, if you read the detail, I won't read all of it because it is quite involved, but I'll drop in a link below. You can download the PDF of the full document, but it requires action by the 14th of March, so not long at all ago. So between this, by the time this video uploads, it'll probably be about the 7th or 8th of March. So have a look at the link But briefly, what it's to do with is the fact that the Thames and Severn Canal, obviously we've got lots of water here. The Thames and Severn Canal is a waterway which links the western part of England to the eastern part heading into the Thames. And if you think about it, it has a water connectivity, and obviously in order for the canal to be fully restored between the western and east, it's important that it has a water supply in it. Now there are plans afoot to build a huge reservoir at Abingdon in Oxfordshire, but there's no joined up thinking in terms of how the flow of water is going to be, because the southeast has greater demands on water supply than the southwest because of the population density, but it's wetter in the southwest than it is in the southeast. So it's important to get that flow of water from the west to the east to where it's most needed. And one of the ways that can be done, of course, is to use the canal to supply that. So I'll just read basically what it says. It's called the Water Resources Southeastern Regional Plan. I know it says Southeastern, thinking West Country Wanderings, what's that got to do with Southeast? But I say that the two are linked. It's water transfer call to action, and it says it's a WRSE Consultation Document. So there's a little green, if you download the PDF document, you'll see there's a little green bar. If you click on that, you'll be able to get more information, you'll be able to respond to it. But it says that over the last couple of years, the emphasis has changed in favour of environmental and social benefits as against focusing on least cost. However, the emerging plan is promoting large-scale reservoirs, including a monster one near Abingdon, and energy-hungry and costly water reuse and desalination schemes for the period between 2025 and 2040. A Severn Thames transfer features as likely in the 2040 period, which is a slight improvement on originally it was 2080, which is like way in the future, but it's not much of use to the canal as it is. This is an emerging plan and is aimed to solicit comment if we want the priorities to change in favour of restoring the Cotswold Canals for water transfer, with work starting in 2025 and finishing perhaps 7 or 8 years later. We need to make our views clearly heard and in numbers that cannot be ignored. So I cannot emphasise the importance of this document. Have a look at it and then say click on the link. Really encourage it. If you really are interested in canals and would really love to see this canal, as I do, linked again between the Severn and the Thames, then please make your feelings known. Thank you. Well, that's all for update number 7 on the Thames and Severn and Stroudwater Canals, the Cotswold Canals, here on West Country Wanderings. I hope you enjoyed it today. If there's a particular part of the canals here you'd like to see if I can show you a bit more about it, or tell you a little bit about it as best as I can. I'm not an expert. I'm not a volunteer for the various bodies that are trying to get this reconnected again, but I do my very best. I'd love to hear from you, so that'd be great. I was going to do Latin, that's the right spelling, L-A-T-T-O-N this time, but I've decided there would be too much in the video, so we're going to do that next time. So we're going to be covering Latin and the story of the North Wiltshire Canal, which joined up with the Thames and Severn at Latin. There's also a flight of locks there, so just a bit further on from Cerney Wick. So we'll have a look at that next time. Also coming up on future updates, we'll be looking at the Sapperton Tunnel, of course, and the Daneway Basin, and also the canal as it travels through the beautiful Golden Valley between Chelford and Frampton Mansell till it gets to Daneway. So lots more still to come on canal updates on the Thames and Severn Stroudwater Canals here on West Country Wanderings. Until next time, there'll be other videos on my channel about other things, not just canals, but railways, walks, countryside, nature, that sort of thing as well. But there will be another update coming up in the not too distant future. Until then, hope to see you. Take care of yourselves, all the best. Cheers now, goodbye.